Hi, and welcome to Characteristics of Living Things. We're going to be talking about the 8 characteristics of life today. First being that they are made of cells. They are all based on a universal genetic code, which is DNA. They can obtain and use energy. They grow and develop. They reproduce, respond to their environment, maintain homeostasis, and then evolve and change over long periods of time. Our first one we're talking about is that living things are made of cells. So that's either going to be unicellular organisms or multi or many-celled organisms, okay? Organisms that are made of just one cell, an example is like a bacterium, okay, like E. coli or pneumonia bacteria that causes bacterial pneumonia. Multicellular organisms are going to be more complex, things like a grizzly bear, a cat, a dog, humans, okay, plants. And multicellular organisms are made of many types of cells that are differentiated for specific jobs, okay? For example, if you think of humans, we have brain cells and skin cells and muscle cells and eye cells, okay? Blood cells, bone cells. So tons of different cells doing jobs that are helping the organism function efficiently overall, okay? And cells are not going to be found in anything that was non-living, all right? Unless that matter was once alive. So if you have like a dead organism, there would be cells in there, but they would no longer be living. However, if you have something that is abiotic or a non-living factor, then it's not going to have any cells in it, okay? Our next topic is reproduction. So it is definitely necessary for the survival of a species. Sexual reproduction is undergone by multicellular organisms. And in sexual reproduction, you have 2 cells from different individuals uniting to produce a genetically different offspring, okay? So we get some genetic variation going on there, all right? Now, some plants are able to actually fertilize themselves sexually. Some plants actually have male and female parts and can therefore fertilize themselves. But the actual act of sexual reproduction is still occurring because you have 2 cells coming together to form genetically different organisms. Asexual reproduction is where we have one organism reproducing by itself, and that organism that is produced, that offspring, is therefore going to be a genetic clone, okay? So bacteria do this through binary fission. Our body cells and humans undergo mitosis, which is a type of asexual reproduction. Plants can undergo this, and many other organisms can as well. But again, the main difference here, asexual is by an organism's self, and itself is doing that, and it's a genetically identical clone. Sexual reproduction, you need 2 cells from different parts, and you get a genetically different organism. Living organisms grow and develop. So these are obviously related, but they are slightly different as well. So growth is where you're physically adding new material or new cells to either add to existing parts or to replace them, okay? So if you imagine your skin cells, your skin entirely regenerates every few weeks or so, and that would be, a matter of growth. You're replacing parts that wear out. Obviously, growth is also like physical size. You're not the same size, as an adult that you were as a child, so you are growing in size. That is growth. Development, on the other hand, is a cycle of changes that eventually leads to aging. So imagine this is dealing a lot with like the endocrine system and hormones in humans and other organisms. Because, as humans, we all go through a stage of puberty where that is a stage of development. And throughout your life, you go through these other phases where you're developing and, again, leading to aging, okay? 2 examples of the pictures I have down there are a tadpole for a frog. Okay, so that will undergo a stage of development and eventually turn into a frog. And here we have a tiny plant. Okay, so a plant that is germinating, a seed that is germinating, and a plant is undergoing that phase of development to eventually grow into the adult plant. Metabolism. Metabolism is the way organisms obtain and use energy. So everything has to be able to get energy from their environment or their surroundings. It's needed to grow, reproduce, develop, obviously just function normally, okay? Plants can obtain energy from the sun during photosynthesis. These plants, and because they can make their own food using that energy, they are called autotrophs. Animals, like us on the other hand, we have to take in energy in the form of food. We have to physically eat things to get our energy. Because we cannot make our own, we are called heterotrophs. Now, the overall term of metabolism is made up of two main parts. You have anabolic and we have catabolic reactions. So anabolism is where organisms take smaller, simpler substances and they actually build bigger pieces, okay? So imagine if you are an athlete or you like to lift weights, if you are, lifting those weights, what you're actually doing is damaging and tearing the muscle. But then when we repair it, it grows bigger. And so that is an anabolic process. We are building that muscle back up, okay? Catabolic reactions or catabolism is where we break things down. So when we take in food and we digest it, we're breaking down those substances into the simpler ones so that we can then go and use it to build things that we need, okay? So anabolic, catabolic obviously are going to be the opposite of one another. You're either breaking things down or you're building things up. The overall sum of all of those reactions, both through anabolism and catabolism, give you your overall metabolism. Living organisms also respond to their environment, okay? So these can either be rapid changes very quickly, like a very quick response. If you touch a stove that's hot, your hand's immediately going to pull back. Or it can be slow. So like as trees begin to lose their leaves in the fall, getting prepared for winter, that's more of a gradual change, okay? But they're still responding. And they respond to these stimuli. A stimulus is just a change in the environment that causes an organism to have a reaction or a response. So on your screen, what you see is just a variety of stimuli, and then obviously an organism will respond to this stimuli. So light can be a stimulus, temperature, odor, sound, heat, pressure, any of those can be stimuli to an organism, okay? For humans, for example, a stimulus for us might be temperature. So as we go outside, if it's really hot outside and your body temperature starts to raise, you begin to sweat. So that is your response. You're trying to go back to normal, okay? Likewise, if it's very cold outside, you may begin to shiver. That is your body's response to a stimulus, which would be temperature. Irritability is just the ability of living things to react, and so both plants and animals actually exhibit this. A lot of times plants are forgotten in this sense because they don't really do a lot, if you stare at them, but plants do react to the environment. So, plants will grow actually towards sunlight. Beneath the surface, their roots will grow towards water. They can sense where water is. So plants actually do respond to their environment, even though if we're just watching them as we sit outside, they may not be actually physically moving like we are. And this whole responding to the environment is all in regards to homeostasis, an important topic in biology and just an important term to know. But this is the way organisms respond to stimuli and how they are able to keep their conditions internally the same. So as your body is experiencing these changes both internally and externally, your body has to find ways to combat those changes and make sure everything stays fairly the same inside, okay? So if you imagine it sort of like a balance, if you have, a little balance beam here and you have, okay, and you're putting weight on either side, if one side goes down and the other goes up, now we're all out of whack, okay? So now our balance beam is going to be more like this, okay? So homeostasis is what allows our body to bring those things back to normal. And so we can stay in this position, okay? That process by which we elicit responses to bring us back to normal and maintain that balance, those are called feedback mechanisms, all right? So you sweating when your body temperature rises is a way to get us back to normal. that is an example of feedback, a negative feedback, okay? And so we like to stay in a normal condition. The last two characteristics of life that we talk about, and they're large, very inclusive topics in biology, so we spend our own unit on them. Evolution, so things will change over time given differences in their environment. So as conditions arise, certain individuals are better suited for the environment that they are in, and the ones who are best suited will pass on their genes, and therefore their offspring will have those favorable genes, those favorable characteristics. Then if the environment changes again, we're going to have a new set of traits that are most favorable. And so populations and species will change over time. And the final characteristic is going to be everything has a universal genetic code, that being DNA. All living organisms on Earth, from bacteria all the way up to us complex humans, have DNA. They all use the four same letters, A, T, G, and C, that adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. The only thing that differs is the arrangement of those letters. The sequence or the order that those letters are arranged in is what gives all the organisms on Earth their different traits, okay? And I hope that was really helpful for you guys.